Welcome to Chanakya Forum. A warm welcome to all the panelists and the viewers to Chanakya Forum. Today we will be discussing on yet another very important topic. And the importance of this topic is that today, that is 27th of October 2020, exactly about 73 years ago on in Srinagar, and within a matter of hours was what was the difference between the capture of Kashmir by Pakistani tribals, and what came in between was the Indian army there. Now, I would like to first pay my tributes to the valiant soldiers of the Indian Army and those pilots who flew the first Sikh battalion there in the midst of heavy shelling. After remembering them, I move now to the topic which is the current topic, that is raiders in Kashmir then and now. So we will discuss about what things have changed. Have they changed, or is it the same? So to discuss that, today we have a fantastic panel. We have with us Ms. Manu Khajuria. She's the founder of Voice of Dogra. Welcome, Manuji. She's joining us from London. We have Shri Touseef Raina, the social political activist from Kashmir. Welcome, Shri Touseef. And also we have with us well-known defense analyst, Major Gaurav Arya. Welcome, sir, to the show.
Thank you.
And we will also be joined by Shri Amjad Mirza, a human rights activist, in a short while. So my first question straight away goes to Ms. Manu Khajuria, ma'am. I would like to know that, before we discuss about the raiders, the tribal invasion, we want to know what was the truth in 1947 as far as the Dogra kingdom was concerned, because there is a lot of myth, there is a lot of falsehood which is there, that it was because of the atrocities carried out by the Dogra kingdom that all these tribals and all had come. I would like to know, because you have done a lot of research on it, that what is the actual story? What was the state of the Dogra kingdom in 1947, just before this invasion which it took place?
Thank you, Colonel Dini, for inviting me to this show today. Let's begin with the first truth. The first truth is that it was not raiders, and it was not a tribal raiders who came into Jammu and Kashmir. It was a Pakistani invasion. That's what it is. I mean, I think to even call it a raid, to call them raiders would be wrong, because we very well know that this operation was designed as soon as Pakistan was conceived, and Operation Gulmarg stands a witness to that. And even before that, because the Britishers were very clear that they needed Jammu and Kashmir because of its geostrategic importance and their engagements and their planned engagements with Russia. So everything else that comes, I think the second chapter in Raiders in Kashmir, which is by Major Akbar Khan, says that, because he starts that chapter with saying why did they attack Jammu and Kashmir, and they call it that the Pakistanis were very concerned and shared the same concern with their Muslim brothers in Jammu and Kashmir about the future of the state. Now, that's the second lie. First is the tribal raiders. Second is that they were in solidarity with the Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir, which was a Muslim majority state. So first of all, let's be very clear, the 101 years of Dogra rule, there was no demographic change, there was no exodus, there was no conversion. All that happened after 47, once the Dogras handed the state over. So nothing like this had happened before, and the fact, it's a testimonial that it remained a Hindu minority state, despite having Hindu rulers. This could have changed very fast. It was a very long rule. Secondly, there's a lot of evidence by what the British political agents were sending in their memos about what's happening in the state. You talk about General Scott, you talk about Webb, who was a political agent in Jammu and Kashmir, and they were reporting that everything was peaceful and calm in the state. And this was just an extension of how secular the state was and had been. Now, this whole idea that Dogras were oppressive rulers and they had oppressed the valley was needed. This kind of a narrative was needed because such was not the case. And how else do you communalize? How else do you convince people that, this is why we had to do what we had to do? Because everything else points differently. It was, in fact, the Mughal rule and the Afghan rule, which was extremely cruel, which was extremely oppressive, which came before Dogra rule. And the Sikh rule was an extension of the Mughal rule and the Afghan rule. It was then the Kashmiris were truly oppressed. In fact, the Dogras came in and they introduced a lot of new policies. They introduced a lot of land reforms, especially a lot of reforms as far as the shawl industry went. A lot of weavers were now free from their masters. So all this had happened under the Dogra rule, but it had to be told differently. And these raids that were happening, the actual raids that were happening had started in September. I mean, my village was razed to the ground. It's a village in Jammu district, and it was razed to the ground because a lot of raids and armed groups of tribal raiders were coming into Hiranagar, Samba, Jammu district as well, and in Punch. And then finally, what happened on October 22nd was a clear invasion. And let's also refer to Peer Manki, who was in Pakistan, and he was telling them this was jihad and promising the 72 hoors that if you go into Jammu and Kashmir, this is what will happen. And the understanding between the Pakistani army and the tribal invaders was, I've mentioned this before also, that everything that was movable belonged to you, and everything that was immovable, that is the territory, would be would belong to Pakistani army. And they've always treated Jammu and Kashmir as a bargaining chip. You can see it. It's the PoJK that Pakistan has is nothing but a Chinese colony. So that shows that this was a narrative created to justify their invasion of Jammu and Kashmir.
Absolutely true. That's actually very wonderfully put by you. That the first narrative itself was that they built a narrative that there was a lot of misrule and that atrocities were happening, and that's why they had to come. They had to. Absolutely true. Major Gaurav, Arya sir, I would like to know from a military perspective. Major General Akbar Khan, he has written that book, Raiders in Kashmir, and he actually quotes himself that he has written a paper on armed revolt inside Kashmir. An entire thing, as you see as a military man, it brings out the brilliant military mind of planning how the entire tribals, and yet bringing out a narrative that it was not Pakistan army was not there. So how do you see from 1947 in this particular operation? And many of us in India also do not realize that this was started in 1947 itself, this planned revolt inside Kashmir, and that's been happening since then. How do you see this genesis or the thing happening from there, sir?
Colonel Denny, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this lovely forum and this great discussion. You mentioned the Indian Army and you mentioned the Indian Air Force for having done a sterling job. There is one hero of Kashmir we must mention, and his name is Maqbool Sherwani. And I think we must not forget Maqbool Sherwani for what he did. And this is on record of the Indian Army. And whenever people go to Baramulla and beyond, the Indian Army is still taking care of his statue, and the Indian Army still cleans his statue and pays regards every year. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to Maqbool Sherwani for what he did. Now, also, we must understand that this entire Dogra rule that you spoke about and Manuji spoke about, this extended up to Tibet. And it was a very powerful rule, and it was a stable rule, right? So there will be many people who will have this opinion and that. But it was a largely peaceful rule with a few exceptions. It was a largely secular rule. It was a largely it was a rule where largely citizens were law-abiding, and everything was kept under control by the Dogra rulers. Now, what happened was that the military invasion of Pakistan, and Manuji is right, actually, Pakistan has been using this false front. It's not just in Kashmir in 1947-48 where Pakistan called it a tribal invasion, and they said that, these are tribal lashkars and nothing to do with the Pakistan. They did the same thing in 1965. They did the same thing in 1999 Kargil also, where they send in people and they say, no, this is not the Pakistan army, this is the Mujahideen. And then later on they got caught. So there are two things to be noted. First of all, Pakistan's war plans in 1947-48, in 65 and 1999 have had, and this 47-48 plan, this invasion plan was actually made in June, July, before Pakistan actually came into being. This preparation was going on in Northwest Frontier Province for a long time. So what happened was that when they actually invaded, they were indisciplined. They raped, they pillaged, they killed people. and everybody knows what happened in the nunnery and in Baramulla, where the Christian missionaries were, and the nuns were raped and killed, etc. A lot of mayhem took place there. Now, today was the day when one Sikh landed, and one Sikh started to push forward. And sometime later, 4 Kumaon landed, and as we are all aware, Major Somnath Sharma got the first Paramveer Chakra of the Indian Army for the Battle of Badgam, which is actually the airport at Srinagar. That is where the war took place, the battle took place. So, having said that, I would like to say that, this has been consistent with Pakistan using elements for culpable deniability. You see? So, even today, they say stuff like, we don't control Hafiz Said. We don't know who Maulana Masood Azhar is. This is the same line of thought which comes from 47, 48. There is no change in Pakistan's strategy. It is the same strategy. And use of irregulars. You see, so they'll use the armed forces. They will use the Pakistani army with a small, small pocket of irregulars, and then say that, no, there is no army, there are only irregulars. This is what they have done in the past also. This is what they continue to do. Another very critical point about Pakistan is that this entire obsession with Kashmir is something that they have built up right from 47, 48. And now all Pakistani politicians and military men, they're riding this tiger. No Pakistani politician is willing to talk peace with India simply because, you'll have to compromise on Kashmir, and this is something that cannot be done. And the Pakistani army will never talk peace with India as far as Kashmir is concerned, because Kashmir is what funds their lifestyle. You see, their children studying in Oxford, in Cambridge, in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, driving those BMW 7 Series and having houses in London. Where does this money come from? Certainly not on a general salary. Colonel Dinny, you would be aware that Indian Army chiefs, when they retire, they have these 3-bedroom houses in Gurgaon and Noida.
Absolutely.
And they live on their pension, which is not very substantial. But General Rahil Sharif, on the outskirts of Islamabad, he got 93 acres of land. Can you imagine a general of the Indian Army getting 93 acres of land somewhere outside Delhi? Unheard of. He will not even get it. He will not even get a 1-bedroom small 800 square feet apartment free. But in Pakistan, you give away land because that is the nature of the state. Coming back to the Indian response, I think it is high time, Colonel Dinny, that we did something about it. The Prime Minister mentioned in Parliament that more than 42,000 Indians have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir state in the last 30 years. And a vast majority of them happen to be citizens of the now Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, earlier the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan, there is a joke, Pakistan, the Pakistani army chief saying that we will fight for Kashmir till the last drop of Kashmiri blood. Not Pakistani blood, but Kashmiri blood. Yeah. So that is what Pakistan is saying. And thank you for letting me speak, Colonel Dinny.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. I think it's fascinating. We all talk about information warfare in the current scenario. But look at from 1947, they've been very, smart enough to build this narrative. Today, like you said of Maqbul Sherwani, and I was about to ask Shri Touseef about Maqbul Sherwani. And today, most of the Indians, they do not know about Maqbul Sherwani. There's a infantry battalion in his name, which is there, but of the Jackley regiment. But still, we do not know. And the only thing which we know, 2 Jackley, sir. And the only thing which we know is that there is problem inside Kashmir and such like this. So the information warfare or the narrative building exercise has been there since 1947, and now is the time. I think this is the first time when we were actually. People were putting up Black Day posters and all in Srinagar just come up now. So you see the kind of narrative building which has been done, and that is something which is really something of a concern for us. Now I'll come to Shri Touseef, Raina. You've been in Kashmir for a very long time. You are from Kashmir. I want to know from you that what stories have you heard from your father or from your grandfather that these atrocities which were carried out by the tribals. We know in Baramulla there are churches which are in which the atrocities. There's a well in which the nuns had to jump. There were in Uri, if you go, there are houses of Kashmiri Pandits and Muslims, Kashmiri Muslims who were brutally massacred there. And how did you do you see as a Kashmiri that these atrocities? And I would also like to know, why is it that not many people speak about it?
Hmm.
Uh, Thank you so much, sir, for inviting me on this esteemed panel. And indeed, Maqbool Sherwani is our hero. And there are so many things which are not, which we don't not know, and they are not taught us in our schools. Or and you were talking about this narrative building of what Pakistan is doing now in Kashmir. And firstly, I totally agree with Manuji, what he said earlier. It was an invasion. Clearly, it was an invasion and backed by the Pakistani army. And basically, sir, Pakistan has lost all the wars. What Pakistan tried in Kashmir, from these Kabali, they said first Kabalis, and then they tried to, they tried the Kargil, and they lost all the wars. They whatever they tried, and now there is a shift. And first, when they send in 1989, when they send Pakistani terrorists to Kashmir, and then they try to radicalize the youth of Kashmir in the name of religion, and then it became a religious, so-called fight, or what they called jihad against India. And but what I believe and what I feel that, as you already said, that Maqbool Shirwani was a Kashmiri Muslim from Baramulla. I am from also from Baramulla, and he stood up and he was brutally killed by these Pakistani terrorists. And the thing is, we, the young generation of Kashmir, the majority young people, don't know this. We are not taught these things. There is a problem within our system, or I can blame my state also for this. We are not taught these things. And I have heard from my parents about the Dogra rule, and my grandfathers. They were happy with that Dogra rule. Even the Kashmiris in the large number they came to the roads, and they stand with our Indian army, and that's why we threw them away where they try to enter from. But at the meantime, we Kashmiris believe in peace. We Kashmiri want to live with our country with dignity, and that is the problem where Pakistan is trying to deal with. So that's why nowadays they are just trying to the information. They're manipulating the stories on the internet, social media, or Twitter, and try to push false narrative internationally against India. Or I have been to Pakistan. I was in US last in March, and I met so many people. They were even Pakistanis, but they total don't know the real picture of Kashmir. We
Shri
Kashmiri
Touseef, there is some
stand
issue
for
with
the
your
India.
audio. Shri Touseef, there's some issue with your audio. I'll just come back to you again. Shri
Sir.
Amjad, are you Mirza? Are you there?
Yes, I am there. Yeah, I've just switched off my camera. Thank you.
Welcome to Chanakya Forum, and it's really nice to have you on our show. And
Thank you.
my question to you, Shri Amjad Ayub Mirza, is that we all were talking about now since 1947, and today being the day when Indian Army landed there in Kashmir and actually saved Kashmir. Since then, there is, of course, an Indian the side of Kashmir, and there's also a Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And I know that you closely it's a thing which is very close to your heart. What is happening inside Pakistan occupied Kashmir? I would like to know that the atrocities which were conducted from 1947 by the tribal and the Pakistan-led invasion in Kashmir, and after that, a formal operation itself now happening in which the militants are pushed in. But things are not much different even in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Even now, the atrocities continue to happen there as well. So my question is, how Azad is Azad Kashmir?
Acha, this is a good question, but namaste to Major Gaurav ji, and this is for and all of you as well. This is something that I want to read out to the panel. You know the book Raiders in Kashmir, right? in the preface, General Akbar, who at the time was, I think, Major or Colonel, he led the attack. He writes, this is the mindset that Major Gaurav Arya was talking about. And this, I read it out to you. It says, as raiders, we may perhaps also qualify for sitting at the distinguished gallery. Now, pay attention to these, adjectives and these words. Distinguished galleries of personalities like Changiz Khan, Taimur Lang, Mahmud of Ghazni, and even Alexander, whom some historians call raiders. So they have this mindset still prevails among the Pakistan army, the Pakistani narrative, cultural narrative, that these raiders in Kashmir were following the tradition of Changiz Khan, Taimur, Mahmud Ghazni, this mindset. So they take pride in the fact that they raided, Kashmir, and they still sell this. Now, what is happening in PoJK? PoJK is a colony. You have to understand that PoJK is a colony. It is an occupied territory, and it has with Pakistan. It has got a relation of a master and a colony. So, first of all, what does a colony? What does a usurper or an occupier do to the people of his colony? Number one, it attacks the culture. So there are many ways in which it would attack your culture. It would dissipate your language. So your language will be demoted, the scripts will be removed, and you will be treated as a joke. So saying, oh, ye Kashmiri hai sale, that type of language, and everyone will treat you as a second grade person. Second thing they do is territorial exploitation. So they will plunder your mineral resources, they will plunder your water resources, they will plunder your forests, and they will plunder even your human resources. So what they have done is they have opened up a gateway towards Middle East, and they have used our youths as a means to earn foreign currency. So no schools, no colleges, no universities. So what are you left with? Oh, mera beta Dubai jayega, mera beta Qatar jayega, mera beta Saudi jayega. So they go to these foreign countries as laborers, and they send a lot of remittances. Only if these people from PoJK stop sending the remittances, Pakistan's foreign currency reserves will go down like nosedive in 24 hours. Then they have got laws of this interim constitution of 1974, which was prepared by Pakistan, given to the puppet legislative assembly in Muzaffarabad by Bhutto, was passed as an interim constitution, and we call it Act 1974. Now, Act 1974 is a typical example. You can compare it with the French colonization of Algeria. You can compare it with the British colonization of India. You can compare it with anything. There are so many similarities. I mean, it's the same. According to Act 74, no one from PoJK can get a job unless they fill a form and sign the form declaring that they support accession to Pakistan, number one. Number two, that they support the ideology of Pakistan. Now, Nazriya Pakistan. Now, what is ideology of Pakistan, my dear panelists? I've already read it out from Akbar's book. This is the ideology of Pakistan. Now, no one can participate in a general elections or councillor election, wo to hue nahi bade arse se, until and unless they sign a form declaring that we are loyal to Pakistan and we support accession to Pakistan, and that we support the Nazriya Pakistan. Now, these are ye moti cheezein hain. Now, if you delve deep into it, it translates into an absolute lack of civil and human rights. So if anyone from Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir or even Gilgit Baltistan tries to form some kind of an organization or assembly of people or association that challenges Act 1974, they are disappeared, they are kidnapped, they are thrown into the jail. So there is, so what happens is the people of Jammu Kashmir now, since the abrogation of 370, there has been a massive change in the political scene in PoJK.
Okay, sir.
It has, and it is two sides to it. Number one is that it has given them confidence. It has given them confidence to stand up against the Pakistani occupation. And the second thing is it has exposed the Pakistani narrative in such a way that once they have realized that Pakistan has lost all diplomatic support on the Kashmir issue, especially from Saudi Arabia, from UAE, you know, the day this abrogation was happened, and after 1 or 2 days or a week before or after that, I can't exactly remember, maybe you can help me there, Prime Minister Modi was given the highest award of UAE.
Correct.
You know, so these things have jolted their political psyche. And what have they done? They know if they stand up against Pakistan directly, they will face a lot of issues. So they have started civic movements, social movements like Sadkein Banao Hamari, Pani Chahiye, Bijli Chahiye, and they have made committees like Kotli Awami Action Committee, Mirpur Awami Action Committee, Muzaffarabad Awami Action Committee. So this is the first time that mobilization among the masses in PoJK is taking place. Now, Gilgit Baltistan has got Schedule 4. According to Schedule 4, you cannot get involved in politics other than pro-Pakistani politics.
Okay.
So it's the same situation at both sides.
Okay.
Now,
I'll come back to you, Dr. Mirza. I'll come back to you after just another round of interestingly, just when we were in 2005, when we were in Uri, and when this road had opened up, Uri Muzaffarabad, so when people from Indian side of Kashmir went across, and after some time they came back, and when we met them, they were telling us that please keep us here only. We are much happier here. We don't want. They just went there and had a look, and similarly, the people who had come from there, they didn't want to go back, because what this entire thing, what they saw here, and was totally out of the thing, like what you mentioned. It was actually a treat to hear them say, "Is there anything you can do to keep us here?" That is the kind of thing which was there. Manuji, coming to you, I want to just touch upon the cultural, the mindset kind of a thing. The Dogra kingdom had even Muslim soldiers with them, and there were a lot of pressure on the king, to take out these Muslim soldiers so that they can be safe. But yet he chose not to do it. In fact, I remember hearing also that the king himself, after some time, wanted to go and fight in Baramulla. So yet for so long, such a false kind of a thing was there. So can you just throw a little more light on this kind of the era in which the Kashmiri Muslims and the Kashmiri Pandits and the Dogras all used to be together? But then this Pakistan wanted this Kashmir badly, and they created this entire facade to so that, and a division, which after which there was total mayhem.
Colonel Dini, I've missed the previous speaker, Touseef Raina, what he said, but because I had unstable internet connection. But this is a very, very important question, and it also answers the the fact that in PoJK, the people living in PoJK have been asked to identify themselves as Kashmiris. This is very telling, and this is related to your question, because what they have done is basically people living in PoJK are Dogras, and they are Pahadis, and they are Gujars, right? And I have the distinct advantage of being in London and being amongst almost 1 million of people from PoJK. So I am in touch with Mirpuris, and I am in touch with who are my fellow Dogras. Now,
the point is that why have they been asked to identify themselves as Kashmiris, and why we should in India not make the mistake of doing so? Because they have been asked to align with a separatist Kashmiri, the Kashmiri separatist policies and people in the valley. They've been asked to identify with them. But is that their history? No. Because the history of these people is the fact that they were a part of the JK state forces. Out of the 8,000 people of JK state forces, more than 3,000 were Muslims. You gave a very good example. I mean, you referred to it. Lieutenant Colonel Narayan Singh was being asked again and again that you have, your battalion, which is the 4th Jack, and which was like the elite battalion, which had fought against the Japanese. He said, you've got 2 battalions of Muslim, like 2 Muslim companies and 2 Hindu companies. So do you trust your men? Because we've been hearing the refugees are coming, and they had started coming in from December 1946. Refugees are coming, and they're talking about these, Lashkars being armed, these tribal raiders and the Pakistani invaders. So he said, no, I trust my Muslim men. They are my sons, they are my boys, and I trust them completely. I fought with them in the trenches of World War II, and they can never betray me. But unfortunately, what we see today, Pakistan had communalized, had been doing this for a long time. The newspapers from Pakistani Punjab had been sowing these seeds of communalism, which never existed in Jammu and Kashmir. And we saw what happened on that fateful night of October 22nd in Muzaffarabad. Lieutenant Colonel Narayan Singh and his Hindu companies were slaughtered as they slept. So this is something we need to tell, because today the Mirpuris that I meet in London, so many of them have actually asked me and told me that they are sorry of what their ancestors, their grandfathers did. And the first time I was shocked when a Muslim from, PoJ from Mirpur said to me that maybe we are suffering for the sins of what our grandfathers did. So this history and this correct narrative is very important. Please let us not call it POK. Let us call it POJ. It's mainland Jammu. And let us identify them and call them out that they are not Kashmiris. They don't speak Kashmiri. They are not ethnic Kashmiris. So why are they, if they've been brainwashed to align with some sort of, those handful of separatists in the valley, this needs to be the telling of history. The whole point of it is that truth should come out. And the truth is that PoJK is also just Dogras and Gujars, and who were a part of the army, who were a part of the princely states army. And these people have fought alongside the Hindu officers, and now they regret it. That was a momentary lapse of judgment. That was a process of communalizing. And that's what is continuing to happen in Jammu and Kashmir. The radicalized youth that you see on the streets, the separatist politicians who, try to earn from both India and Pakistan, these double agents, all this is continuing to happen. And if we don't call out the problem as it is, we'll never solve it. We'll only do some stopgap, we'll just be painting over the cracks. So we really need to address these issues. And when we talk about Maqbool Sherwani, let me just quickly add here, we must speak of Brigadier Rajinder Singh. We must speak of a Captain Salatia, who actually took 500 men were coming. There were these trucks coming, and he captures the first truck, he turns it around. That truck is like in the middle of the road, and the convoy can't come in. Otherwise, Srinagar would have fallen. Srinagar airfield would have been with the Pakistanis. Maharaja Hari Singh would have been captured. There would have been no signing of the instrument of accession. So these men should be remembered. The nationalists in Jammu and Kashmir, people like Touseef, Raina, anybody, any Dogra, these must be rewarded. Let's stop appeasing the wrong side. Let us stop rewarding bad behavior, because as any parent would tell you, rewarding bad behavior is only going to beget you worse behavior. So all these facts, I think, must come out, and let's start telling the truth about Jammu and Kashmir.
Absolutely. Very well put. Major Gaurav sir, I wanted your views now on there is 2 examples right in front of us. There is one example of the Pakistan Army, which is continuously carried out atrocities, whether it is non-Muslims or Muslim, doesn't matter, because what happened in East Pakistan, we all know, that to which 1971 happened. In 47, what happened is right in front of us. After that, the terrorists being pushed, we know what is happening. And the mindset, what Dr. Amjad Mirza also mentioned, and compare it with the Indian army, who has been fighting there with a humane, kind of thing. I'm not saying that we are the perfect thing and there is nothing, there is never any wrongdoing. Of course, when there is force being applied, there will be friction and some kind of collateral damage, or otherwise also some mistake can happen. But if you compare both, the atrocities carried out by one is never mentioned, However, even a small mistake by our own forces are, is highlighted like, something which is out of the thing. So how do you see this kind of two unrealistic kind of comparison by within India also we can see this happening.
Okay, Colonel Dini, with your permission, first I'd like to go back to what Manuji said. Very interesting thing, I'll tell you, and then I'll take 1 minute and then I'll come back. In 2017, I was invited. I'd gone to London and I was, invited to speak at the UK Parliament. I went and spoke at the UK Parliament, and then I went to King's College London, and then Oxford and other places. So King's College London, there was this British Member of Parliament. He's a peer. He's a lord. His name is Lord Nazir Ahmed, and Nazir Ahmed is a crook. Okay, and Nazir Ahmed needs to be publicly thrashed. Now, the thing
Thank you.
The thing with Nazir Ahmed is Nazir Ahmed started saying, Kashmir this, Kashmir that. So I got up and I said, you're not even Kashmiri. He says, no, how can you say that? Oh, Manuji jo baat kar rahi thi, same thing. So how can you say that? Of course, we are Kashmiri. And then what happened? Something very interesting happened. A good friend of mine, his name is Vinod Tikku. He's a Kashmiri Pandit. Vinod Tikku started speaking in Kashmiri to Lord Nazir. And then I was sitting here, and next to me was Junaid Qureshi. And next, Junaid Bhai started speaking to him in Kashmiri. And this guy, Lord Nazir, was totally foxed. He says, which language are you speaking in? He says, "Saab, aap hi bol rahe the, aap Kashmiri, hum to Kashmiri mein bol rahe hain, aap jawab dein." He had nothing to say, because this entire fraud. So they are, like Manuji very rightly said, they are of Dogra descent. They are Pahadis, they are Gujars, they are Bakarwals. They are not Kashmir. Kashmiri are people who live in the valley. And Dogras have their own identity, and it's a great identity. Why should you want to lose that identity? Right. Now, you spoke about how the Indian army has been, largely a human army, minus a few aberrations here and there, collateral damage. Colonel Dini, I'd just like to say that, and I've said this before also, any army, by the nature of armies everywhere in the world, US Army, Israeli, Chinese, Indian, any sort of army, it's not a scalpel, it's a broadsword. It's like a hammer. Armies work on the principle of disproportionate force. We are taught modification, modification mountain. If there is one enemy, 9 should attack. So, Fauj is like that. It's an offensive force. That is the nature of the army everywhere. Yet, the kind of casualties that the Indian army has taken in Kashmir, no other nation has taken. I can name case studies after case studies. About Tushar Mahajan, 2 officers. He was a para officer, Tushar, and there was another para officer, Pawan, and both youngsters, chote the. And these people, they went inside, and I don't have enough time to narrate the entire operation. But there are so many officers and men who have lost their lives in Kashmir. Which army does that? Had it been the US Army, one helicopter gunship would have taken off, one Hellfire missile, end of the story. They don't care. But we understand. We don't use helicopters in Kashmir except for transportation and logistics. Absolutely. We don't use helicopters and assault drones. We don't use fighter aircraft. We don't use artillery. We don't even use mortars. We use platoon weapons in Kashmir. Absolutely. We use platoon weapons. Now, this comes at a cost, Colonel Dini. There is a cost. And the cost is being paid by the officers and men of the Indian Army. And I would also like to add CRPF, the BSF, the Jammu and Kashmir Police. It is these people who are paying the cost for this humanity. There is a cost to be. Har cheez ka daam dena padta hai na? There is a price to be paid for everything. Now, for example, you carry out an operation. You served in the valley, I've served there. Now, see, there is an operation. There are 5 terrorists in a house. What is this entire thing about inner cordon and outer cordon? Why should there be an inner cordon and outer cordon? Why should there be house-to-house search? During our time, cordon and search would be 1 or 2 battalions, 3 battalions. Yes. True. And now that is stopped.
Crackdown.
Now, those things have stopped for so many years. Now it is int-based operations, right? Now, I would like to say that here I'd like to bring out a point, Colonel Dini, is that, why do all this? Why should the Indian Army do this? Why put your men, officers and men in danger? Do it like the Americans. One aircraft takes off from Srinagar, you give the grid reference, he lets loose a missile, and thank you very much, happy birthday. But if you do this, innocent people will die.
Absolutely.
And it is not just the land of Kashmir, which is ours. It is the people of Kashmir who are ours.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not
You know,
false.
and Colonel Dini, yes, there has been wrong committed by us in Kashmir. Yes, we have gone wrong. If anybody says that there has been no human right violation in Kashmir, that person is lying. But it is also true that we have punished many people for doing human rights violations in Kashmir. We have punished those people. Have we managed to punish everybody? No. We are not perfect. We have committed mistakes in the past. But can Pakistan say that after 1947, how many officers they have punished for human rights violation? They did Zarb-e Azb, right? They did Raddul Fasad. I'll just take 10 seconds more. When those children were killed in APS Peshawar, more than 130 innocent kids were killed by Ahsanullah Ahsan and his men. Within 24 hours, Pakistani Air Force F-16s took off. F-16s and helicopter gunships took off, and they bombed North Waziristan without any proof. They just carpet bombed entire localities. Now, these are two armies, and you can do the character sketch yourself.
Absolutely. And we have been seeing this, earlier because there was no social media. This never used to come out. But as late as a few days back, we saw how a company commander or a second in command was actually going out and asking the terrorists to surrender, and putting his own and his men under risk, and they took the surrender of that boy who was, who had picked up the gun. So that is the kind of thing which is happening. And as you rightly mentioned, that we are a force which, of course, like any force, does make mistakes. But the thing is that the people are punished. Shri, Raina, my question to you is that you are the new face of the youth in Kashmir. When I say new face, I mean that you represent a fearless kind of a person in the valley who have been, who have seen enough of violence, and who understand that you have been taken for a ride by Pakistan and its proxies, and now you want to see a change. And we, when we see the change, that Kashmiris are now topping NEET exams. Kashmiris are topping IAS entrance. Kashmiris are playing in the IPL and doing well. So, according, do you feel that there is a new a wave of optimism among the youth in Kashmir, and they have now understood that till now they were actually being taken for a ride, and now enough is enough?
Sorry, sir, I was not able to listen the whole question, but जितना भी मुझे समझ आया, I will reply. Basically, जो यहाँ पे एक हमारा मेन स्ट्रीम, आई विल बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, जो हमारा यहाँ पे आज तक सो कॉल्ड मेन स्ट्रीम पॉलिटिक्स था, तो वो उन्होंने इतना नुकसान किया जितना यहाँ का सो कॉल्ड सेपरेटिस्ट नहीं कर पाया. उन्होंने कभी भी क्लियर पिक्चर नहीं बताई यहाँ पे. जिस तरह से आज तक क्या होता था, वो दिल्ली में जाके कुछ और स्टोरी बताते, यहाँ कुछ और स्टोरी बताते. कुछ पॉलिटिशियंस है जो आज भी मतलब सोशल मीडिया से एक्सपोज हुए. मतलब एक टाइम पे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया को लगता है इनके बगैर शायद कोई है ही नहीं जो वहाँ पे बात करता है हमारी या डेमोक्रेसी की बात करता है. और ये जो सो कॉल्ड मेन स्ट्रीम था, इन्होंने कभी चाहा नहीं नौजवानों को कि यूथ को पुश करें या यूथ को आगे बढ़ने दें. और फेयर फैक्टर की बात करें, यहाँ पे फेयर फैक्टर बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है. अगर ये फेयर फैक्टर को हम माइनस करते हैं, आप देखें सर, यहाँ का जो यूथ है वो आगे आएंगे, वो इलेक्शंस में पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे. आज भी आफ्टर रिवोकेशन ऑफ आर्टिकल 370 आप देखिए कितने नौजवानों ने प्रोटेस्ट किया, कौन आगे आया, किसने आवाजें उठाई. इट वाज ऑल दिस मैन्युफैक्चर्ड बाय आवर सो कॉल्ड मेन स्ट्रीम पॉलिटिशियंस, क्योंकि अपना चल रहा था. बाइकआउट से उनका फायदा होता था. उनको पता था जितना बाइकआउट होगा उनका अपना वोट बैंक है, थोड़ा बहुत वो जीतेंगे, तो वो चलते आ रहे हैं. और जो स्पेस है यहाँ पे, जो यूथ को स्पेस है, वो नहीं दी गई. आजकल हमें समझ आता है, अगर हमको सबसे ज्यादा हमें किसी ने नुकसान पहुंचा है वो तो हमारे मेन स्ट्रीम लीडरशिप ने पहुंचा है. और उसके साथ साथ जो पाकिस्तान के साइड से फेयर फैक्टर है, क्योंकि जो भी विदाउट एनी फेयर अपनी बात बोलता है, कि सीधी बात करता है, इवन की आई रेस्पेक्ट पीपल, अगर यहाँ पे कोई पाकिस्तान की भी बात करता है, हमको कोई हमारी स्टेट नहीं मारती है, लेकिन अगर कोई हिंदुस्तान की बात करे और डेमोक्रेसी की बात करे, अगले दिन उसका फतवा जारी होता है पाकिस्तान से। यहाँ पे जर्नलिस्टों को, पॉलिटिशियन को और पूरा एक थ्रेट लिस्ट निकलता है। फिर आप इमेजिन कर सकते हैं कि जिस माहौल में हम यहाँ पे रहते हैं, फिर कितने लोग आगे बढ़ना चाहेंगे, क्योंकि आफ्टर ऑल फैमिली प्रेशर, बाकी प्रेशर, ये जान का खतरा, तो ये सारा कुछ मिला के तो वो ही कर रहे हैं। और आई एम बीइंग वेरी ऑनेस्ट, अगर यहाँ पे अगर आप ये मिलिटेंसी टेररिज्म को माइनस करके, और मेजर गौरव आर्या साहब जो कह रहे थे अभी, हम इंडियन आर्मी तो बिलीव करती नहीं है टेररिस्ट को भी एलिमिनेट करने के लिए। वो तो लाउड स्पीकर पे ऐलान करती है कि दाल पे एनकाउंटर चल रहा है कहीं किसी जगह, वो कह रहे कि आप सरेंडर करो, हम आपको मौका देंगे। इवन की रिसेंटली सोपोर में लोकल जो टेररिस्ट थे उन्होंने सरेंडर किया। और अगर हमारी इंडियन आर्मी उनको क्या कहते हैं, कोशिश करती है कि चाहे जो भी कहीं भी उनको प्रॉब्लम हुई हो पास्ट में, कोशिश करिए, बातचीत करें। एंड हमारी जो आर्मी है तो वही तो मौका दे रही है। इवन की सद्भावना में जो आजकल क्रिकेट टूर्नामेंट्स हो रहे हैं, दे आर पुशिंग यूथ, जितना भी वो कोशिश करें कि पॉजिटिविटी की ओर। दिस इज व्हाट आवर इंडियन आर्मी इज डूइंग, आई मीन नाउअडेज।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल तौसीफ, आपने बहुत बढ़िया बातें कही है। और ये बिल्कुल जो एक्चुअल ग्राउंड सिचुएशन है वो आपके जैसे लोग जब बोलते हैं तो उसका बहुत बड़ा एक अर्थ रहता है। अभी वी जस्ट हैव टाइम नाउ टू क्विकली गो टू ईच ऑफ द पैनलिस्ट एंड वी वुड लाइक टू नो हाउ डू यू सी द फ्यूचर ऑफ Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, panning out in the future with whatever is happening in India, whatever has happened with Article 370, whatever is happening inside Pakistan, and what is your views quickly, if about a minute or plus, if you can each share that how do you see the things panning out in Jammu and Kashmir. First, I will go to Manuji. Could you share your thoughts on this?
I think Touseef Energy has covered in quite detail that how things are changing on ground. I mean, we've recently seen that we've seen what the army operations, how humane and kind they are, and a lot of political, inviting them into political processes, inviting them into regular normal life, especially in Kashmir, because that's the most disturbed region of the state. That is happening. But as a Dogra, I have to say that what the people of Jammu are looking forward to is political empowerment. When they said, they celebrated the abrogation on the 5th of August, I was in Jammu. I participated in a Tiranga rally, in fact, on that very day. So what we are expecting is that we've had 70 years of discrimination from Kashmiri politicians, and that schism between these two regions has been, created by those very politicians Touseef ji was referring to. That should end. Delhi should understand that those people cannot be empowered anymore. They have no right. They, you have Mehbooba Mufti who comes out and again sort of gives us a threat and talks about the Indian flag. We are sick and tired of these politicians. Jammu wants political empowerment. Jammu wants to be heard. Like today on your panel, you have a Dogra. This was not possible a year back. We would have all sorts of people, all sorts of self-proclaimed experts discussing Jammu and Kashmir, except those very people who created the state and ruled it for 101 years without any issue. So for Jammu, I am seeing, I mean, I had mentioned this to Major Arya, we're seeing a demand for a separate statehood. And that is emerging from this whole idea of political empowerment. And that can come when there is an honest exercise of delimitation. There are more seats for Jammu, which is a more densely populated area. We don't want to rely on just the census of the fraud census of 2011. We want all the factors to be taken into account, more seats, more political representatives. So delimitation and political empowerment of Jammu is a must if you have to give justice to us.
Okay, fine. Dr. Amjad, what do you feel that, the contest of in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, how do you see the future?
Well, you see, first of all, I would like to say that Brother Touseef has mentioned everything in very detail, and it is very encouraging to see people from the valley, standing up. The other day, Junaid Mir from Jammu Kashmir Workers' Party, he took out a rally and went to the UN mission and gave a memorandum against Pakistan to be charged for war crimes. And wahan pe the press interviewed him and they asked him and he said, हमें पता है कि इसके पीछे कौन सी वर्दी है, एक ही वर्दी है और वो पाकिस्तान की वर्दी है. These things are very encouraging. There is I see a difference in approach towards PoJK issue. uh, between those who are living in Indian Republic and those who are from PoJK, like myself. आप लोगों का मसला पता क्या है? आप लोगों का मसला ये है कि you like to discuss about the invasion, like to present facts that this was actually an invasion and Pakistan has this certain type of mindset and that type of mindset. हमारा ये मसला नहीं है. We know that. हमारा मसला ये है कि हम कब इंडियन यूनियन का हिस्सा बनेंगे, हम कब पाकिस्तान के इस जो ये ऑक्यूपेशन है इससे हमारी जान छूटेगी. When are our people going to be emancipated, liberated territorially and culturally, and we can live a normal life? Our children can have a future. We have no future. Our children have no future. Our children have future कि चाय वाले के जाके पाकिस्तान में, पंजाब में किसी स्टॉल पे काम कर लें, या वो दुबई चले जाएं, सऊदीया चले जाएं. This is no life. This is no future. So here is what I am saying. Number one, as opinion makers, Gaurav, Arya, Manu, Khajuria, Touseef and Colonel Dini, all of you, you should now raise your voice on public platforms for atrocities going on in PoJK. Baba Jan, Iftikhar Karbalai are serving 60, 70, 90 years imprisonment in Gilgit-Baltistan. Tanveer Ahmed is in death cell just because he took off a Pakistani flag from Dadial. So these issues, you should make them public issues in Kashmir and in Jammu as well. Number one. Number two, if you think the PoJK and Gilgit-Baltistan is part of Indian Union territory, then it should reflect in the Indian government's policies. It should reflect in the sense that you should make a special provision, whether through presidential decree or whatever, I don't know the legalities, but you should make a provision for people who are from the PoJK to be represented in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. You should have an advisor sitting in Jammu who is from PoJK. You should have one in Gilgit, in Leh or Kargil, who is from Gilgit-Baltistan. You should have these centers. Then, long time ago, Major Gaurav Arya used to say that we should have a think tank that should sit in Delhi and coordinate their work and come up with policy suggestions for the government of India. That I don't see happening. Now, I can assure you one thing. We are trying to use peaceful means, dialogue. We are talking to India, I mean, in the sense that we are asking them to raise their voice for us. But if this does not happen before 2024, if this does not happen, then please don't be surprised if you find us going back and picking up arms against the Pakistan army itself. Then we have no choice. We have no choice. We are peaceful people, but when violence it does not stop, and there are all the means of solving this issue peacefully are exhausted, then I'm sorry, we have to pick up arms against this Pakistani occupation. Yeah. And then at that time, please don't complain that why is this insurgency going on inside Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very strong and very passionate views, Dr. Mirza. I think that's very well said. Shri Touseef, how do you see what is happening and what is likely to happen in Kashmir? I know it's an intelligent guess, but you, as I see it, represent the youth of Kashmir. How do you see this panning out? Although you made a mention, but how do you see for the youth, especially in the political process?
I think I have been working from 10 years on ground to promote democracy, to involve youth, especially in political process. And I think first time I'm seeing there's a change on ground. So recently, government announced that DDCs, that elections, and we have BDC elections, and we have panchayat elections, and it was never before. And our so-called mainstream politicians, they never wanted this, कि लोग participate करे. There should be an actual democracy. And now, This is what we call democracy, the grassroots democracy. पंच बन रहे, सरपंच बन रहे, बीडीसी बन रहे, डीडीसी के इलेक्शंस हो रहे. और मैं एक बात बताना चाहूंगा कि we should stop this politics of appeasement. जो ये आज तक अपीज कर रही थी यहाँ की पॉलिटिशियंस को. अगर कुछ लोगों ने यहाँ पे करप्शन किया है, दे शुड बी बुक्ड. अगर यहाँ पे इतने इतने महल बनाए लोगों ने, जिनके पास जब वो आए उनके पास कुछ नहीं था, तो वो करोड़ कैसे कमाए इन्होंने, उनके पास इतने बड़े घर कैसे बने. तो इनको एक मिसाल बनानी चाहिए कि वी विल नॉट टॉलरेट कि जो भी नॉनसेंस होगा. और एक क्लैरिटी आज के टाइम में आई है पॉलिटिक्स में, और हमको ये समझ आता है कि नाउ पीपल विल एंड ऑनेस्टली, मैंने पहले भी बोला कि फियर फैक्टर की वजह से लोग डर रहे हैं आगे बोलने से. मतलब मैं घूमता रहता हूँ, मैं लोगों से मिलता हूँ, दे आर वेरी हैप्पी. एंड इवन कि व्हेन दीज आवर सो कॉल्ड लीडर्स वर बिहाइंड, वो जेल भी नहीं थे, अपने घरों में को लॉक किया गया था, हर एक फैसिलिटी भी थी उनको. तो जब भी बाहर आए हैं, मैं बोलता हूँ ये जान बचाओ डिक्लेरेशन, जो रिसेंटली गुपकार डिक्लेरेशन जिसे कहते हैं कि आप हमें सपोर्ट करो, हम आप सपोर्ट करेंगे, आपकी चोरी हम बचाएंगे, हमारी चोरी आप बचाओ. तो इनको बोलेंगे भाई हमको मत पकड़ो. मतलब we know this and people in the ground realize this, and now we wish and we hope अब एक नया दौर स्टार्ट हुआ है. हाँ, बाकी जो प्रॉब्लम्स है, जो भी मसले हैं जम्मू कश्मीर, वो पॉलिटिकली हम आवाज उठाएंगे, चाहे हमें कुछ गलत लगे चाहे कुछ सही लगे, वो अलग बात है. लेकिन डेमोक्रेसी का जो मुझे लगता है पहली बार इंट्रोडक्शन हुआ है जम्मू कश्मीर में.
बहुत बढ़िया तौसीफ जी. एंड मुझे पूरा उम्मीद है कि आने वाले दिनों में हम आपके जैसे और लोगों को सुनेंगे जो एक्चुअल डेमोक्रेटिक प्रोसेस में भाग ले रहे हो. बहुत खुशी की बात है. सो फाइनल वर्ड्स फ्रॉम मेजर गौरव सर. हाउ डू यू सी बोथ you have a view of both the military kind of thing. Now I know that the terrorists are reducing by the day, and also the political changes or the things which is going to likely to happen or pan out in the future. How do you see things?
Colonel Denny, I have 3 quick points. Number 1, Jammu and Kashmir police must be reformed and empowered.
Absolutely.
Both reformed and empowered Jammu and Kashmir police. They are very badly paid. They are poorly equipped. And when there is corruption, then people will say, obviously there is corruption, but that is because an SPO gets 6,000 to 8,000 rupees. You cannot afford to, your entire family कैसे करेगा आदमी 6,000 रुपए में? फिर वो उल्टे काम करेगा.
Very valid.
But we don't take care of them. वो कश्मीर पुलिस वाला, उसको गोली लगती है, कोई बात नहीं. It does not matter. Why? He's also an Indian. We should take care of him and his family. Number 1. Number 2, there is a lot of corruption in the bureaucracy, especially the lower bureaucracy and middle bureaucracy in Kashmir. बहुत ज़्यादा problem है. Third thing, Mehbooba Mufti and Farooq Abdullah, put them back in jail, but not in Kashmir. You can put them in Tamil Nadu or someplace, or Kerala, or you can put them in Nagaland, someplace no far where they don't get out, at least for 2-3 years. Let them be there. And last, massive development in both Jammu and Kashmir. ये लोग झूठ बोल के कि हम कश्मीरी मुस्लिम्स का डेवलपमेट करवा रहे हैं, वहां पे भी रोड में इतने बड़े बड़े गड्ढे हैं कश्मीर के अंदर, और खुद उनका जो कश्मीरियों के लिए पैसा है अपनी जेब में डाल दिया इन लोगों ने, है ना. एंड दे हैव ऑब्वियसली डिप्राइव्ड द डोगरास को तो डिप्राइव करा ऐसे, और कश्मीरियों को डिप्राइव करा ऐसे, और लंदन में अपने माल बना के बैठे. सो दीज पीपल शुड बी थ्रोन इनटू जेल. That's all I have.
No doubt. Absolutely, there's no doubt that corruption is one of the biggest things which I have seen myself, and even now, there's one thing which is actually, if removed, a lot of things will change. I would like to thank each one of the panelists. It was a fantastic and fascinating talk, and it brought out a lot of things, and I think it is a start of a new era in which the truth will be told, and the truth will be told to everyone who till now believed the falsehood. And now is the time when it's high time that we just speak the truth, and I'm sure such webinars will bring out those truths. So on behalf of Colonel Tyagi, the chief editor of Chanakya Forum, I would like to thank each one of you once again, and also the viewers for watching this program. Thank you so much. Namaste. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.